Hey, does Microsoft actually have a problem with being a little too transparent during their one-on-one interviews with news publications, Yahoo, Wall Street Journal, in particular, Bloomberg? There's been a recent interview between Bloomberg and Microsoft's gaming CEO, Mr. Phil Spencer. Philly, I like to call him Philly Spencer. Microsoft's Phil Spencer, he had a recent interview with Bloomberg, as I just mentioned, and they must have asked him just the right questions just to get him to open up, completely open up, maybe open too much. He might have opened up a little too much in this interview they just recently had. I'll let you guys be the judge of this. I'm just going to report on what was said. Everyone seems to... The interview was kind of straightforward. They must have asked them questions in regards to what's your current stance on how well the acquisition with Activision is going. Are you happy with the current sales and engagement with the recently released Call of Duty Black Ops 6? How do you see the future going forward for Xbox, and how do you plan to make us all continue to be happy, loyal customers for Microsoft and the Xbox? And let's just take a quick look at what he just happened to have said. People seem to be really harping on a specific phrase that came out of this interview that has social media just blowing up about it. It's everywhere now. And that quote happens to be, and I quote, "I do not see sort of red lines in our portfolio that say thou shalt not," he said. "It's too early to make any sort of decision on the next version of Halo," he said. A lot of people are seeing this in two ways. At least I believe they're seeing it in two ways. One, to say that you don't see a red line in exclusivity, software exclusivity between your company and your competitors. If you don't see a red line, everyone's going to have the misconception that there are no more exclusives coming from Microsoft. The past, the present, the future, everything. Every game that you've ever created and every game that you plan to create and release has the potential, the great potential, of not only just being on the PC, but also on any existing and future PlayStation that happen to come out. And it's just, people are just focused on PlayStation. Nintendo, on the other hand, Nintendo is kind of seen in the gaming community as Switzerland, right? They don't seem to be a threat, but yet they're the most successful. Nintendo, by far, is the most successful company of the three. I'm not going to say the most profitable, but definitely the more successful in engagement, hardware sales, software sales, and nostalgia. Their community, their Nintendo's fan base is very loyal, extremely loyal. They buy their software in droves. That is the one company whose exclusive titles. Now I'm just saying exclusive. Their exclusive titles are beloved. Okay, they are beloved, and they are very well supported in their community. A new Mario, a new Zelda, a new whatever from Pokemon, I can't forget, new Pokemon, whatever that title happens to be, and no matter how quirky it could be, they tend to support it for the most part. There are exceptions to the rule with Nintendo. They do have some games that didn't do as well, but they still would sell somewhere around 6, maybe 7 million copies of said titles that didn't sell as well. The only game I probably would say makes the true exception to low sales overall for the many generation of consoles that this game has been around is Metroid. But that's a subject for another matter. I definitely want to talk about Metroid at a different time. But back to Microsoft. So this interview, everyone is very particular about his words. Everyone seems to pick apart Microsoft's interviews for every word that they ever say. And I understand why. I kind of don't blame them, because you know what? I really would like this. For the most part, every interview of theirs just seems to be saying a lot without saying nothing. Does that make sense? You're saying a whole lot to us cryptically, but you're just not saying it in clear, concise words. You're just not coming out and saying, we are third party. You're just not admitting it. Maybe you need to admit it, but you're just not doing it. I can understand. There's mainly one reason why, and I'll get to that. There's one main reason why they refuse to come out and say we're third party, and I'll get to that. But this interview in particular just got the world in a tizzy, because, well, when you say there's no red line, and you're going to take that at face value, which everyone's taking it right now at face value. I can see a little bit beyond that. But when you look at that phrase, when you hear that phrase being said by Phil Spencer, that there are no red lines in our portfolio, that means their staple titles, their pillar titles, their main 3 or 4, if you want to count any one of their main games, but their main 3, which is Halo, Gears of War, and Forza, any one of those 3 games happen to migrate to the PlayStation in any way, shape, or form, well, you'll upset your own. Well, you have the potential. I'm not gonna say it's going to absolutely happen, but you have the potential of upsetting your own fan base. And at the same time, you're setting a precedent to your competing platforms fan base that I'm just going to wait, no matter how long it takes. I'm going to wait for every game release that you do to end up on my set platform. And that platform, say it with me, is the PlayStation. Okay? That's the only main platform that could possibly run these games. So it's the PlayStation. Outside of the PC, it's the PlayStation. So once again, when you set this kind of precedence and expectations of your products to be at one decade and a half ago, when everything that was being created, everything that was being developed by your internal teams, all of them were considered exclusive. That mindset is now void. It is now void. At least in a way, it is void. On the surface, it sounds like you're basically, I wouldn't say throwing in the towel for a competition. They want to sell their customers on the idea of, you're in our ecosystem. We want to sell you on the idea of an ecosystem that goes with you no matter where you happen to be. No matter where you go, we will follow you. Our games, our products will follow you. You gotta think of it more like a tree. Now, the heart of a tree will have your console. That'll be your day one console release. In their case, that is the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. The branches are your games. And along with those branches, there are other flourishing buds. There are other flourishing leaves. It looks very pretty. And that happens to be other platforms. Those other platforms can be anything and anywhere. So in the case of Xbox's ecosystem, that would include the PlayStation, of any generation, the next Nintendo, current Nintendo and the next Nintendo, the PC, Amazon Fire Sticks, and Samsung televisions, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous can be tablets, it can be phones, it can be any electronic device that happens to be able to support their main distribution platform, which is Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. There are multiple tiers for Xbox Game Pass, but the one tier that will allow for newly released games is Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Now, we all know that Ultimate is not supported on the likes of other competing console platforms. So for as long as both Nintendo and Sony will not allow for Game Pass to exist on their consoles and disrupt their ecosystem, because that's exactly what Game Pass would do, they're just only willing to accept case-by-case submissions of individual game titles onto their platform. Sony definitely will accept it, because all they see is just, well, we get a 30% cut for every title sold of Microsoft's on our platform. And even though that does give our customers exposure to their titles, the game is ultimately sold on our machines, so that can lead to the possibility, not a definite, but a possibility of more console sales for us, more software sales for us, and more money at low risk. But these individual games of Microsoft's are considered an advertisement. Okay, when you send your internal titles to another competing platform, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Those games are either new or they're years old, but either way, it's new to that platform's customer base. I am an old gamer in the minds of these companies. Okay, I'm old. I've been gaming for well over 40 years. I'm not gonna say my age, but well over 40 years. And when I started gaming, yes, everything was exclusive. Everything was considered exclusive. That's just how it's been throughout all the generations, throughout all the decades. It's been like this. This is what I've grown up with. This is how I've consumed my product, my games. This is just what we were all used to, and we didn't see any of these immediate changes being a thought, just even being an idea of sending these games over to another platform with the idea that I can choose now where I want to play these games. It's a cool idea. It's a cool concept, but I'm not entirely sure if it's the right idea in the gaming industry, or is it? Because like I said, I am considered old. I am an old gamer, and these companies are no longer targeting gamers like me anymore. They're not, okay? We are considered old. We are the old. They want new blood. The new blood, which is basically Generation Zers. Okay, I take that back. This community of gamers, okay? This community do not care at all. I'm going to say this loud enough for you all to hear this. They do not care at all about exclusivity. So yes, the idea of Game Pass to help subsidize the cost of a game, of future games, from the combined total of subscriptions, this really helps towards your next multi-million dollar AAA title. If all you have to do is just cipher funds from the overall pool of subscribers. this does work. It kind of is like, you gotta also think it kind of works like the Maryland lottery or any other state lottery. When everyone puts money into the pool, you can pull out certain amount of funds. You don't even have to pull out the full amount of funds from the Game Pass pool. You can just do a quarter of that money. You can do half of that money, plus your own internal budget. Mix those two monies together, and there you go. There's your budget for your next AAA game. Half the cost is already paid for through Game Pass, and the other half is through your own internal forecast, and you can just go ahead and drop the game. You can go ahead and just develop it to whoever the development studio is going to get that title, develop that title, and go ahead and put out the game just from half the budget coming from Game Pass. Or sometimes, and a lot of times, the entire budget can come from Game Pass. AA games and indie games can absolutely be paid for through Game Pass subscriber budget. Now, I know there's a little bit more to it than just a pool of money that never pays out anything. I'm sure that the servers that they're using and there's other miscellaneous costs from the pool of Game Pass, that's fine. But ultimately, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars from subscribers from Game Pass a month. Hundreds of millions. It's not just a couple bucks. They're making hundreds of millions. That's why they're still doing it. That is why they're still doing it. If you can't understand the concept of what Game Pass is really doing in the background, then you're just ignorant, because this is exactly what they're doing. They wouldn't keep feeding Game Pass if it wasn't ultimately making them money per year. And now with the inclusion of a Call of Duty, a brand new Call of Duty in the Game Pass, and they're going to have Call of Duty in Game Passes for the foreseeable future. Ultimately, when you think of Game Pass, you're going to be thinking about Game Pass. When you think of Game Pass, you're going to be thinking about Call of Duty and vice versa. When I think of Call of Duty, it's associated with Game Pass, not just Xbox. It's associated with Game Pass. That is, Game Pass eventually is going to be the Coca-Cola or the Pepsi of the gaming industry. This subscription service is going to get so big. It's already big now, but it's going to get monumentally big. It's going to be a colossal monster. There's no stopping it now. Now that Call of Duty's here, there's just no stopping it now. They should be advertising Call of Duty along with Game Pass at concerts, at sporting events, at movie theaters, at any public main function. They should be having mobile units going out from city to city and advertising the importance of Game Pass to the customers in the flesh, in person, saying, hey, we're here. We are Xbox. Experience the importance and the greatness of Game Pass. I can't believe I said that. But experience what Game Pass has to offer. And if you're a Call of Duty fan, hey, you can just subscribe, play it, and continue playing all of our many hundreds of other games in our catalog. Call of Duty is to bring you in, and Game Pass is to keep you in. So for everyone that's in doubt or in fear that after said month of release of a Game Pass game, that a player is going to go ahead and end their subscription to Game Pass, or maybe just go ahead and buy the game. Either way, Microsoft gets their money. Look at it like this. I'm a brand new COD player. I hear about Game Pass, or I can just go and buy a COD on any platform I choose. Microsoft gets that money. If I'm in Game Pass and I play the game for a month, and I play the campaign and I'm done with the campaign, am I going to leave Game Pass? Chances are I'm not, because if I'm playing Call of Duty nowadays, it isn't just for the campaign. I'm playing it for the multiplayer. So Microsoft gets money. If I buy more cosmetics, Microsoft gets money. No matter where I'm buying that cosmetic, no matter what platform I buy that cosmetic, Microsoft gets money. I'm just feeding Game Pass no matter where I go. It's kind of like a trap. If I'm wanting to play Call of Duty, no matter where I go, I'm spending something to Microsoft to play Call of Duty. And that's the trap. That's the idea. They want these games to have long legs. Call of Duty right now, outside of GTA and some other titles, AAA titles, that is the moneymaker per year outside of sports. Sports games, they still make a lot of money. And you have You have Madden games, you have FIFA games, you have WWE games that will arrive from time to time in the Game Pass. Of course, those are the stragglers because most of the time people just go and buy those games. But when they show up in Game Pass, that's just an extra cherry on top. For those that never played those titles and they continue to buy those, they continue to play the games, they can play it on Game Pass and buy cosmetics there. Not entirely sure if they get a cut, if Microsoft gets cut from that. But the fact that it brought those players into Game Pass to explore the catalog too, that's more money for Microsoft. So ultimately, in closing, ecosystem. Microsoft is selling ecosystems now. They're not just selling consoles. And so is Sony. Nintendo is dragging their feet, but eventually they're going to broaden their horizons with their own broad version of their ecosystem for Nintendo too. It's just going to be a lot slower for them because everything they're doing is hardware driven. So is Sony, but Sony's a little bit more open-minded about it. They're just going about it incredibly way too slow. They should be doing day one title releases on the PC along with console. They should be doing it, but they're not. They're dipping their toe into it, but it's not enough. You need to go fully into PC release with your console releases, Sony. It's just the way it is. You're going to do it. Eventually, you're going to be doing it. You're just taking your sweet time. That's money loss. That's your fault. If you lose money on these releases because you're too stubborn to release it on the PC at the same time, that's your own problem. So Microsoft sees where Microsoft sees where the money really is. It's in ecosystems. It's not in the hardware. It was in the hardware once upon a time, back in the day when there was no other advancements in the idea of an ecosystem. But now it exists. And it's just money it's just money sitting on the table. If you're going to ignore it because you want to express the pride of your hardware, well, it's only gonna work for so long until you realize I need more money. I need more money. So, yes. In closing, ecosystems is the future. And with that being said, I'm your host, Musical Weapon. Come back again. We'll do this again.